Deep in the dense forest of Nkoyo village, two men sit by a crackling fire. Pastor Ezekiel, in a white suit, has a self-satisfied smile, pretending to be holy. Across from him, a hooded figure whispers ominously, his face hidden, unknowingly to them. Kofi's mother hides behind a tree, her face filled with shock and fear, as she uncovers the sinister truth about the pastor. Once upon a time in a small village called Nkoyo, life was simple. The people were poor but happy. One day, a man named Pastor Ezekiel arrived. He wore a white suit and carried a big Bible. He claimed God sent him to bless the village. The villagers were excited. They had never seen a pastor like him. He spoke with power and promised miracles. God will heal the sick and provide for the poor, he said. The villagers believed him. They built a small church for him. Little did they know, Pastor Ezekiel was not who he claimed to be. Pastor Ezekiel held his first service. The church was packed. He prayed for a sick boy named Kofi. The boy had been unable to walk for years. After the prayer, Kofi stood up and walked. The villagers were amazed. They praised Pastor Ezekiel. He is truly sent by God, they said. News of the miracle spread to nearby villages. More people came to see Pastor Ezekiel. They brought gifts and money. Pastor Ezekiel smiled. His plan was working. But Kofi's mother noticed something strange. Her son's eyes looked empty, like he was not himself. One night, Kofi's mother followed Pastor Ezekiel. She saw him enter the forest. Curious, she followed quietly. She saw him meet with a strange man in a dark cloak. They spoke in low voices. The potion worked well, the man said. Pastor Ezekiel laughed. Soon, the whole village will be under my control, he replied. Kofi's mother was shocked. She realized a miracle was fake. She wanted to warn the village, but she was afraid. What if no one believed her? She decided to keep quiet for now. Pastor Ezekiel's influence grew. He started asking for more money. God needs your offerings to perform more miracles, he said. The villagers gave willingly. They believed their blessings were coming. Pastor Ezekiel bought a big car and expensive clothes. He said it was a sign of God's favor. The villagers admired him even more. But some people started to question, why does he need so much money? Pastor Ezekiel silenced them with threats. Doubt is a sin, he said. The villagers were afraid to speak out. One day, a little girl named Ada went missing. Her parents searched everywhere but couldn't find her. The village was in panic. Pastor Ezekiel called a meeting. This is a test from God, he said. We must pray harder. The villagers prayed, but more children disappeared. Kofi's mother suspected Pastor Ezekiel. She remembered the secret meeting in the forest. She decided to investigate. She followed him again and saw him taking a child into the forest. Her heart raced. She knew she had to act fast. Kofi's mother followed Pastor Ezekiel deep into the forest. She saw him enter a hidden cave. She waited until he left, then went inside. What she saw shocked her. The missing children were there, but they were not alone. There were strange symbols on the walls and a fire burning in the center. The children looked scared but unharmed. Kofi's mother realized Pastor Ezekiel was using them for dark rituals. She knew she had to save them, but she couldn't do it alone. Kofi's mother returned to the village. She told her husband what she had seen. At first, he didn't believe her. Pastor Ezekiel is a man of God, he said. But she insisted. Our son was part of his plan, she said. Her husband finally agreed to help. They decided to gather evidence. They would follow Pastor Ezekiel and take pictures of the cave. Then they would show the village the truth. But they had to be careful. Pastor Ezekiel had many followers who would protect him. Kofi's mother and her husband followed Pastor Ezekiel again. They took pictures of the cave and the children. But as they were leaving, they were caught by one of Pastor Ezekiel's followers. He took their camera and dragged them to Pastor Ezekiel. You have been spying on me, Pastor Ezekiel said angrily. He locked them in a small room. "You will regret this," he said. Kofi's mother was scared, but she didn't give up. They knew they had to find a way to escape. That night, Kofi's mother found a small window in the room. She and her husband managed to climb out. They ran back to the village, but they knew they couldn't stay. Pastor Ezekiel would come after them. They decided to go to the next village and seek help. They took their son Kofi with them. As they left, they saw Pastor Ezekiel's followers searching for them. They hid in the bushes until it was safe to move. Finally, Kofi's family reached the next village. They went to the chief and told him everything. The chief was shocked. He called a meeting with the elders. They decided to help. "We cannot let this false pastor harm our people," the chief said. They formed a plan to rescue the children and expose Pastor Ezekiel. But they needed more evidence. They decided to send a spy into Nkoyo village to gather information. The chief chose a young man named Chidi to be the spy. Chidi was brave and clever. He went to Nkoyo village and pretended to be a new follower of Pastor Ezekiel. He attended the church services and gained Pastor Ezekiel's trust. He saw how Pastor Ezekiel manipulated the people. He also noticed that some villagers were starting to doubt. Chidi knew he had to act fast. He secretly took pictures and recorded Pastor Ezekiel's meetings. Chidi took the evidence to the chief. The chief called a meeting with the elders of both villages. They decided to confront Pastor Ezekiel together. They would go to Nkoyo village and demand the release of the children. They also planned to arrest Pastor Ezekiel and his followers, but they knew it would be dangerous. Pastor Ezekiel had many loyal followers who would fight to protect him. The next day, the chief and the elders went to Nkoyo village. They brought the evidence with them. They called a meeting in the village square. Pastor Ezekiel was there, surrounded by his followers. One of the chiefs showed the pictures and played the recordings. The villagers were shocked. "This man is not a pastor," the chief said. "He is a fraud and a criminal." Pastor Ezekiel tried to deny it, but the evidence was clear. Some of his followers turned against him. The chief and the elders demanded the release of the children. Pastor Ezekiel refused. "They are mine," he said. But the villagers were angry. They stormed the church and found the hidden passage to the cave. They rescued the children and brought them back to the village. The children were scared but unharmed. The villagers realized they had been deceived. They turned on Pastor Ezekiel and his followers. The chief called the police. Pastor Ezekiel and his followers were arrested. The police took them away to face justice. The villagers were relieved, but also sad. They had trusted Pastor Ezekiel and given him everything. Now they had to rebuild their lives. The chief promised to help them. "We will make sure this never happens again," he said. The village of Nkoyo was in chaos. Many people felt betrayed and angry. They had lost their money and their trust. The chief and the elders worked to restore order. They held meetings to help the villagers heal. They also started a fund to help those who had lost everything. Kofi's family returned to the village. They were welcomed as heroes, but they knew the scars would take time to heal. Pastor Ezekiel and his followers were put on trial. The evidence was strong, and they were found guilty. Pastor Ezekiel was sentenced to life years in prison. His followers were also punished. The villagers felt a sense of justice, but they knew it would take time to recover. They had learned a hard lesson about trust and greed. The village of Nkoyo started to heal. The chief and the elders worked hard to rebuild the community. They held regular meetings to discuss their problems and find solutions. The villagers learned to trust each other again. They also learned to be more careful about who they followed. Pastor Ezekiel, on the other hand, spent the rest of his life in prison. Never will he mislead and extort the villagers of their money again. The village of Nkoyo became stronger. The people worked together to build a better future. The story of Pastor Ezekiel is a great lesson for all. Though there are men sent by God, there are also others who pretend to be. We need to be careful not to be fooled by miracles and fall into the hands of evil men. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. If you enjoyed this video, and want more video like this, please like, subscribe and leave a comment. It encourages us to make more videos.